Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Blair. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Prison Yoga Project, and we are so lucky to have Bo Paulle with us this morning. So everyone, please welcome Bo. Bo is the Associate Professor of Sociology at the University of Amsterdam. Paulle researches the inner workings and measurable effects of potentially scalable interventions meant to improve the educational and life outcomes of deeply disadvantaged students and their families. Paulle has been studying GRIP since 2014, and beginning in September of 2021, GRIP has been his main focus of investigation. GRIP is a rehabilitation program for violent offenders that is scaling up operations in several California state prisons. Welcome, Bo. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Yeah. And continuing to kind of bring us all into the same page, will you lead us in a centering opportunity?
Yeah, I'd love to. Just take
awesome. Thank you.
Take a couple minutes and just land here before we begin. Maybe people are rushing around this morning or my time this evening. And let's just ground ourselves. So if I can invite everybody to sit up with an erect spine. Maybe imagine yourself a ballerina with a beautiful posture. Let's start with a couple deep breaths. And then just breathing normally. And let's bring our attention to our in breaths on the in breath and our out breaths on the out breath. Keeping it nice and simple and curious. What's going on with these in breaths and what's going on with these out breaths? If your mind wanders off, just notice gently, lovingly, where am I rushing off to? It's all good. Just come back to your breathing. As we bring our little mini meditation to a close, maybe it's nice to have a couple more deep breaths, nothing too strenuous. If you had your eyes closed, maybe when you're ready, open your eyes and come back into the space you're in. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. I really loved that language of observing of where you're running off to. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
So oftentimes we'll start some of these conversations of being like, what is your first memory of yoga? But I feel like I want to take it a little step deeper. What was your first modality of, or maybe like the gateway of developing the internal world, your internal world?
Wow, what a question. I have this weird memory of being, I guess, about 5 or 6 and being on my grandparents' driveway in front of their home, where I spent a lot of time growing up, looking at a bush in front of the house. Nothing special. That's the point. Nothing remarkable was going on at all. And I had this sort of meta consciousness moment. It was the first time I remember being conscious of being conscious. And there was nothing at all remarkable going on. It just hit me like, wow, consciousness. I'm actually aware of being here right now. And obviously you don't have that when you're 6 months old. And of course you've had it plenty of times by the time you're 25. But I guess you could say that was when some sort of, not working on, becoming more grounded or anything, but just an awareness that there was this subjective internal life. First time it hit me. In terms of mindfulness, if that's sort of pregnant in your question, I had a very traditional route to that. I live in Europe. I've lived most of my life in Europe, and I went home to visit my parents, and they were just doing so poorly that when I came back, I was just thrown for a loop. And I ended up thinking I was going to see a therapist. And very quickly, after one traditional therapeutic, talking about how rough my relationship was with my parents and how painful all this stuff was, it just became, okay, sit up straight, bring your attention to your feet. And she was just doing mindfulness, body-based mindfulness with me. And that was the start of my practice. And ever since then, every year, I'm just more and more grateful for it.
I really love that. Talking about like the first time that you were aware of consciousness, right? It's like that light turns on.
Exactly.
I had a moment at my grandparents' house too.
Wow.
So yeah, I was in their bathroom, and it was like a kind of like a double sink bathroom. I feel like my head was barely above the counter, right? Around the same age, looking at the mirror. And I was like, whoa, I'm here, right?
Mhm.
It's that indescribable kind of feeling. And ever since then, we don't have that house anymore, but every time I would walk into that bathroom, right, you're like reminded of that
Right.
space.
Right.
Or maybe every time you see that bush, every time you roll up to your grandparents' house, right, you're kind of reminded.
Yeah,
How
and
did you,
conversations like
yeah.
this, I don't know, the conversations like this are the trigger, and then I just go back to it, and either every time I'm thinking nothing exceptional was happening. There was no external remarkable thing that happened, so it was purely internal. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, and I agree with you. And maybe it was actually just like a moment that you were able to be by yourself and you were able to have spaciousness or silence. And so maybe, those are the causal factors that allow the internal to really
Yeah,
wake up.
and feeling safe, and being able to explore and having time. Yeah.
Which, maybe that's not the case for everyone's grandparents, but I felt like grandparents' house was always a safe place. And did
Yeah.
you feel that too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We just ran around for the whole summer, endless hours. It was great.
Yeah. My next question was going to be, so within this session, after you saw your parents really struggling, that was this mindfulness journey. Where did it grow from there?
Pretty soon, I got my wife into it, and then that sort of led me to Gil Fronsdal in Redwood City. I think I just Googled meditation, I don't know, coach or something like that, and he's absolutely wonderful. And that led me to GRIP. Gil often invites Jacques Verdun down to GRIP, to his practitioners center in Redwood City. And around the same time, we discovered Plum Village, which is about 80 kilometers east of Bordeaux in France. And Thich Nhat Hanh, Miracle of Mindfulness, maybe people have heard of him. That's just an absolutely wonderful Buddhist practitioner center, also with a great kids program. So we brought our kids, teenagers, and they really resonated with it. One of the two, especially, she wanted to volunteer for 5 weeks, and then COVID hit. It was a bit of a pity, but she was, locked in, ready to go. And the other one who doesn't resonate with it as much, she'll, on the edge of a remark, you'll see that she really does value it, because she'll be like, oh, that family screwed up, they need to go to Plum Village or something. Even the one who's like rebellious and anti everything her parents suggest, she does get it. And yeah, it's a great place for a family retreat, or a month long, go individually, and that really helped us. I don't know, just ease into a kind of secular, Buddhist philosophical inspired practice that's, yeah, really, really meaningful to us. And GRIP was part of that. I came to GRIP through Gil Fronsdal in Redwood City, and I heard a talk. And Jacques and I believe 3 guys who had been incarcerated, and I think 2 of them just got out. One of them had been out for a while and was a facilitator, had been a facilitator of the GRIP program inside, and now he was facilitating on the outside, going back into prisons. And you just feel the realness and the profundity. And it just became such a compelling sort of potential object of investigation, even though I didn't have a lot of time, and I still don't have a lot of time. It just feels like it wants to happen, and I'm grateful that I've been allowed to get some direct observations and interviews with people. I've worked with some quantitative researchers trying to crunch some numbers and get some more hard indications of the effects, or at least perceptions of the effects. And yeah, it's a blessing. It's really beautiful to have such a meaningful opportunity to study something, and to some degree to be part of something that's so vital, and feels to me genuinely transformative. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
And I really love that it came from a place of practice as well. Like, you were practicing and you were kind of following the path, and you found the center, and then GRIP arose, right?
Exactly.
So I feel like that brings even more meaning to it as well.
Yeah, it was just organic. I wasn't searching for GRIP. I was just checking out the wonderful Dharma talks that they put on Audio Dharma. And there was a time when I was really, really into it, and 45 minutes a day I was listening to Gil Fronsdal. I heard his voice more than anybody's voice, and yeah, trusted him as my guide, and thinking, yeah, if he's inviting these people in, I want to check it out. And one thing led to the next, and then I just reached out to Jacques, the founder of GRIP, and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this. And yeah, before you know it, you have this incredible opportunity to do this research. So it just feels like, it wanted to happen.
Before you and I had met to do our pre-meeting, I remember reading your bio, and I remember seeing GRIP. And it's almost like, from its Buddhist foundation, that almost even within the word, there's like a seed planted. Mm-hmm. And so it strikes you with unawareness. And I immediately was pulled to it. I was like, what is that? Like, I need to know what that is. And so for our audience as well, I know that we had emailed this, but I would love to show this 6-minute video that GRIP has as the advertisements. And Bo, you told me a little bit about the music in the film too, but I felt like that was a great precursor. Will you tell us a little bit about this clip, and then we'll watch it?
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I forgot the gentleman's name. I think he uses in the music world a name like Jazzy or something like that. But he's a Swedish guy. I think he was in LA actually, working on making music with people, and he got into an altercation, and something horrible happened, road rage, and he ended up getting locked up for many, many, many years. And so then he stumbles on the gold, as we like to say, and he found himself in a GRIP classroom, and you have this world-class musician in the classroom. And he infuses into this little song all kinds of GRIP, like technical jargon, like sitting in the fire and all these things that are very, very meaningful to the guys. And if you don't know the GRIP jargon, it won't speak to you that much, but you can still feel the atmosphere, and his gratitude also for, GRIP was a beautiful part of his horrible, I think 10 or 15 years that he was in San Quentin.
Awesome. Thank you. And I see Shonda. Awesome. I love this teamwork of all of us working together. Bill's dropped a couple links in there for audio drama that we just talked about. And then Shonda just dropped the Facebook page for this musician as well. But I'm going to share my screen and we're going to watch this video. And let's see. Okay, hold on. Sorry. I'm not as fast with technology as I could be, we'll say.
Take your time. Take your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I've talked to my team about this before, but I feel like whenever a lot of eyes are on me, I also turn into like the idiot archetype of kind of like I'm bumbling. So really feeling that right now.
Don't be too hard on yourself.
Thank you. Okay, we've got this.
Drop 662 SQ, we be gripping, that's what this could do. Sitting in the fire like we getting BBQ. All colors intertwined like a Rubik's Cube. Yeah. We gotta stop the violence. GRIP is the acronym cause we been guided. Rage and a power and a peace so that we can leave prison before we get released. Yeah. Cause hurt people, well, heal people, yeah. I had a dream I could find my way to freedom and free people, yeah. It's like recently, like I explained, shared with some of y'all, my brother was murdered November 17th this year, last year, and today is his birthday. And normally somebody get hit on our side, we go retaliate and go do something on their side. Now this is the time when you just sitting here and I'm doing it in a healthy way. I'm sitting here and I'm going through the anger. I'm going through the hurt. I'm going through the good times, laughing about the good memories that I had of them. And I'm not just stuck in that one gear. And if it wasn't for this group, I don't think that I would be able to sit back and respond healthily like this. And that's that emotional intelligence. That's being able to track exactly what I'm feeling. That's learning how to sit in that fire and not just go react to something every time you get hurt. To me, that's, like I say, it's big. I've been spinning on the real and cause and effects, search for original pain. I'm feeling shame and regrets when it surfaces. Wonder what the purpose is. I would never know how many people I've been hurt from this. Crime that I committed out of anger. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, thinking how I could have handled the situation better. I see plenty. In a rearview mirror, hindsight 2020.
I feel that the change that I'm making is genuine. I mean, I want to change way back then, but I really didn't know how. I was still lying about my committing offense. I was saying that I was confronted in a liquor store by a gang member. Went outside the liquor store. He followed me outside the liquor store and pulled a weapon out. You know, a struggle ensued for possession of the weapon, and I shot him. You know, that was my legal defense. You know, so I've been living that lie for years now. And you know, but when I got here and I started participating in some of the groups, you know, I started to realize what accountability was about. And then I would be seeing guys, you know, holding their truth. People like Robin, you know, and Kyrie and Troy. I would see these guys, and so they inspired me. They let me know, okay, if these guys can change, then I know that I can change. You know, in terms of being open and honest, you know, about the things I've done.
God bless you, bro. Hey, stay strong, bro. You got that. Your change is evident, bro. Right. You're stronger, man.
Stand that truth, bro. Yeah, and that truth.
We're coming in here because we get to remind each other, welcome each other back in who we really are. Because when we committed a crime, we forgot. We forgot who we really are. And so you cannot forget that again.
on December 7th, 1994, I murdered a woman named Christy Anderson. She is the mother of my now 20-year-old daughter. And on Thanksgiving, I saw my daughter for the first time in 19 years since I've been in prison. For me, one of my biggest problems was my anger and violent and aggressive outbursts. My mother sent me to live with my father when I was 9, and my father used to beat me like I was a grown man. And I think without a program like GRIP, I wouldn't have been able to receive a visit and be open to everything that my daughter Katie had to say to me on Thanksgiving. The fact that someone who I felt I harmed the most in this world could tell me that they forgive me for what I did.
If one of you is working, you're all doing your work, because we all have skeletons in the closet. We all have hurt people. And it's coming clean with that. That is a big part of reclaiming who we truly are.
So in closing, I want to honor the earth, the air, the water, the fire. And I want to say a prayer for our ancestors. And all of you here today, and the work that you're doing, and how it will resonate, not only here in San Quentin, in this community, but throughout the world. So, Troy, could you enlighten us as to what's different here?
I'm still breathing. No. And last week I went to the board and I was found suitable for release.
Just give it a moment for everyone to come back into the room. Thanks for letting us show that. I think when you had sent it to me, it just, you really get a feeling for what the work is and how transformative the work is. So facilitating GRIP, will you talk to us more about the container that GRIP is, this 52-week program?
Yeah. It's a year-long program. It was designed for once a week. As it's spread out across California, given the distances, it became just a logistical nightmare to meet once a week. So in some places in the middle of the valley, it's once a month, and then they pack together 4 meetings and they have a marathon day, which is definitely got some downsides. I've sat through those and can be very challenging. Might also be some upsides. Certainly the upside is you don't have to have somebody in the car 4 hours going, 4 hours coming back every week. But no, it was designed for roughly a year, once a week. And the container is really these roughly 30 guys sitting in a circle. And needless to say, in the beginning, a whole lot of them don't buy in. A whole lot of them think, what is this hippy dippy, yoga, meditation, blah, blah, blah. At least when GRIP comes to a yard for the first time, that's what they think. In many cases. And a lot of the guys are welcomed in despite the assumption that maybe they just want to have some time knocked off of their, the time they have to spend in prison. Maybe they just want some edutainment, some entertainment. Maybe they just like air conditioning. Maybe they don't have Netflix, right? So maybe this will be fun. And the assumption is in about 3 weeks, definitely by 3 months, they're either going to quit tiny percentage quits, I believe something around 5%. I haven't seen the data. Or they're going to buy in like they've never bought into anything. And I think that happens. I'm reminded of the fact that a lot of these guys can be very manipulative. They can lie. You know, they're running gangs. They're beating up their wives or girlfriends. I mean, we have to be alive to that as researchers, right? But I do not believe that they are faking it after 3 or 4 months. When they're in the circle, doing the work, crying like everybody else cries, holding the other guy's hand, just resonating on the pre-discursive bodily level with these other people, processing this pain and trying to come out on the other side, you know when it's real. And after about 3 or 4 months, very few exceptions, I think, they genuinely buy in. And that's when the work can start. Right? The hard part is, you know, the first 3 to 6 or whatever, 8, 9, 10 weeks to get them to really buy in. Once they genuinely buy in, the curriculum is there. They've got great facilitators, and it works, I think, pretty much every time. So the magic is motivation. The magic is getting them to genuinely buy in, and that have the container actually be a container. These 30 guys on this mission to process this just unspeakable trauma and pain, and to feel safe across racialized lines, age, gangs, you know, any number of things that can possibly get in the way. Just toxic masculinity, right? I don't have anything like weakness or vulnerability or shame, or I have anger and I have pride, but, you know, I only do the macho stuff, right? Any number of barriers to having this thing genuinely be a container. And that's tough, and it's different every time. But once you have the container, once they genuinely buy in, the curriculum is there, and it, you know, it's still hard work, but it really runs. It's beautiful to see. Once it starts to interlock and really flow, it works.
It's that the intrinsic motivation needs to come forward first, and then everyone's like in agreement, everyone's there on the same page.
Yeah, you see it in the body language. The first time, the guys will be sitting like this, looking around, you know, they're not open to it. It's very clear. About half of them will be exuding, this is bullshit. And then it'll be a quarter of them. And then it'll be, you know, just 1 or 2. And you just see them, and you see it in their faces. You see it in them, you know, whatever, the posture. And I guess once in a while, one or 2 guys will stay in, even though they still exude that, but it's a tiny percentage.
And maybe that also just like speaks to the depth of their pain as well, right? Like
it could well be, yeah. No, it could be
barriers.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's something, you know, they have some sort of personality flaw. It could be that the pain of facing up to the trauma is just, you know, overwhelming for them at that stage of their lives. And I know you've had Bessel van der Kolk on, and there is very clearly a bodily component to what GRIP is doing. It's, you know, largely meditation based, and it is going back to the original pain of childhood trauma. And some guys will, you know, hear about that, and they'll just think there is no way I can revisit that feeling of helplessness, hopelessness underneath the bed when your mother, blah, 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 in the next room. I just will not return to that, period. So it can just be visceral and, you know, not even conscious. And, you know, I'm not blaming them. But yeah, I think that's probably where some of the resistance comes from. And some of them, you know, they just think that everybody has an angle. You know, like, what is your angle? What game are you running here? You know, how are you getting paid off this, right? It has to be fake. It has to be phony. There has to be an angle, a game. And so everything is bullshit. Everybody's, you know, snakes in the grass everywhere. So Jacques is also a snake. You know, the facilitator here is running game. And they've just been burned so many times. They just don't let their, you know, defenses down. But even that, you know, they get through it. They get through it with, you know, loving kindness and just showing them the authenticity of it. And yeah, again, I said something like 5% of the guys leave, especially when you have these marathon sessions. It can be tough. But no, I think after about 3 months, they're genuinely in, like they've never bought into anything in, the last 20 years.
What does the curriculum look like that really cultivates a sense of safety and really softness that's able to arise?
So my favorite example, I think, is maybe on the second week, they will go around the circle saying, how many years have you been incarcerated? They have these welcoming ceremonies, you might call them, right? And if you have a bunch of 30 guys, maybe 32 guys, whatever, very often the numbers get into 500, 600, 700, 800 years of incarceration, including juvenile detention centers. And some of the guys in the circle will have been incarcerated for 35 years, some going on 40 years. And then they'll write that number down. So, 732. And guess what? That's the name of our tribe. We are tribe 732. And they're, much slower than the way I'm doing it, right? With meditation to actually let it sink in. And then the next question will be, how many minutes between the trigger and the moment that you committed the offense that landed you here? And very often the guys will say 8 seconds, 4 seconds. Maybe if it was a double murder, it would be an hour and 20 minutes. But whatever the case may be, they go around and then they tally that up. And very often you'll have, 732 on one side of the whiteboard, and then you'll have 18 minutes and 36 seconds on the other side. Mm. And the lesson is clear. The long shadow of losing it. Not just for you, of course, also for your victims and your daughter that you haven't seen in 19 years. She's paying for this, right? And whatever the trigger may be, in prison or outside, you must never lose yourself again. And it's just powerful. And when you have a couple facilitators who have been through the program already, and some of them happen to be like shot callers, like guys that they actually really look up to in prison, who are like, yeah, I thought it was bullshit in the beginning too. But I'm telling you straight up, I believe in this. And then you have that ceremony, and then you have all these different, I don't want to call them tricks. It's meaningful and real, but you get good at it, right? You get good at, bringing people in, welcoming them in. And that's, so there's this, I don't want to bring too much attention to this one, let's say ceremony or practice, because every week they do stuff like this, just jaw-dropping and extremely powerful. And I don't know, I just feel like if it's real, if it's coming from a real place and the people that are running it are genuine about it, and a certain number of the people in the circle are actually resonating with it, people just feel this is real. This is the healing vibe. This is the unmistakable healing energy. And this is going to be my container. This is where I can face up to my demons. And yeah, once you feel it, once you've been through it, I think it's very hard for people who have actually sat in that circle to say, oh, these guys are manipulative, they're lying, they're faking it, they're just trying to get some time knocked off their, how long they have to stay in them.
A year is a long time to fake something, to show up each week over and over again with the same community and the same people and cultivate and diving in. Yeah, a year would be a long time to fake.
And they gossip like crazy in prison. And if you are, playing one game in the circle, and then you're out on the circle, and you're out on the yard and you're saying different things, it's going to come clear. They study each other like you wouldn't believe, down to the way you walk, everything. So if you, just to take another example, in prison, if you say, I am a Muslim, I am a Christian, I am whatever, therefore I'm not interested in gangs, or I'm not interested in this or whatever, they're going to scrutinize you. Are you 100% legit? Or are you like getting high and, doing all these things good Muslims don't do, and you just like one day a week pose as a Muslim or something like that, right? So just they're scrutinizing each other. And they're listening to what other people say about, conversations that John had with Frank and whatever. So it's like circles. They've got a lot of time to gossip. And so, yeah, if you're faking the funk, it's going to come out.
Sometimes in our medicine wheel circles, we talk about how our culture thrives or connects on our wounds, which is also gossip, right? And looking at gossip as a form of intensity or addiction. And so just to bring that perspective in there as well. Just relating through our wounds. Rather than what we actually have, other things that we have in common, not our wounding. If you can share, what are some transformative moments that you've witnessed? Because you get to be, you really get to be a witness of everything. You get to witness the facilitators, you get to witness the men and their transformation. So yeah, any stories that you can tell of transformation that you saw?
There's so many. And I have to say again, looking at the film, it's an honor to know these guys. I mean, they're just powerhouses, and just to see them go through the depths that they had to go through with the body keeping the score, right? And to really sit with it and face up to it, and to just process the shame, and to come out on the other side and be able to really speak clearly about what happened. And I always think, if they can do it, what's my excuse? As somebody who was never horribly traumatized, knock on wood, but sure, I've got stuff to work on. If they can do it, then any of us can do it, I'm thinking. So I want to make that point first. What's an example, a sort of interaction that illustrates it? The guy with the dreads in the video, I don't feel comfortable saying his name, but he's now a violence disruptor in the neighborhood that he grew up in Richmond, and they call it the Iron Triangle. Horrible homicide rates, and he's a violence disruptor, taking the way he was equipped, not into grip, but taking it into another program. And he's just I got to know him obviously when he was still incarcerated, and he was just one of the old heads, right? He was just one of the deeply respected guys who had been really senior in the gang structure, and then he turned away from it. And he was in there once with a guy, in a circle with a guy who was like himself, but 10 years earlier, still, struggling to buy in, struggling to, let go of his programming, if you like. And this younger guy was talking about an incident in which somebody stole his food. Happens a lot in prison, right? And he thought it might have been a corrections officer. I don't remember him being absolutely certain, but he was extremely angry, and what they say in prison, right? He didn't want to be made into I'm not going to say the word. And so he was very much into this macho posturing, doing that macho masculinity act about, I wish I had found some, weapon that I could have used, and blah, 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 blah. And, 2 or 3 or 4 of the guys that he was sitting next to were sort of like, supporting him in that macho role. And slowly, the interaction started to shift a little bit, when another guy sitting across the room started to say, you're better than that now. I've seen you doing the work. I know you don't have to stick in this specific, performance of manliness. And slowly but surely, the guy who was, again, performing this enraged masculinity, he started to loosen up a little bit. And then the guy with the dreads, whose name, again, I'm not going to say, he just said, look, man, it's okay. Where you are right now is where you need to be. I was there for many months, many years. I didn't just become the person I am now, in part because of this programming and other programs, in part because of the work I've done. it's a process. It's really.
So I'm not sure if it's my connection or if other people can hear, but Bo dropped out for me a little bit. So let's see. Okay, yeah, no problem. So it was Bo. Okay, Bo is frozen for me. Okay, he froze. We'll just give it one more minute for him to pop back in or pop back on. Really the blessing of being able to speak to someone in the Netherlands, and then also the no problem, Bo. Take your time. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Here we go. In my daughter's bedroom with a different network. Maybe we'll have more luck now.
Perfect. Feels good so far. So maybe maybe start from the interaction of the man with dreads coming in and saying, hey, you're not there anymore. I've seen you doing the work.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't the guy with the dreads. It was another guy, and the whole racialized and non-racialized thing came into it. The guy who was talking about being enraged would usually be classified as African American. Another guy, you could say white, was like, hey, we've been working together in a small group. You're better than this now, right? I know that you have evolved from this performance of masculinity. And then you've got the guy with the dreads saying, it's okay, man, where you are now is okay. This is where you need to be. It took me a long time to get where I'm at, just embrace the process. It'll unfold. And another guy happened to be African-American. He was actually the guy crying most profusely in the video. I'm not going to say his name either. He started saying, I'm so proud of the white guy who said, you're capable of moving forward in this direction. I know you're a better man now. And he was saying, because you're like, my son working in my group, I'm one of the facilitators, older, at least in the grip practice, and you're, young. So you have this real brotherhood thing going on, which just, at least in this interaction, seemed to have nothing to do with race in a context where things are hyper racialized. If you're so-called white, you're not allowed to touch a person who's so-called black, and the other way around. You can get your ass kicked for asking somebody for a cigarette. If you're Mexican and you ask a white person for a cigarette, you can come back and, get your ass handed to you. So in this absurdly racialized, essentialized setting, you have this profound work going on, which I would argue puts race on hold for a little bit and gets to this deep human connection about just healing and growth. And this is just one example, but the point here again would be, this happens all the time. There's just constant, almost interactions unfolding in this container, in these circles, which are, more or less like that. I don't even want to freak people out with some of the trauma stories I've heard, but that might be too triggering for people. But maybe even more profound than what I just told you is just, seeing guys with tattoos on their face, they look like linebackers, just incredible muscle all over the place. And they're revisiting their childhood traumas. And just, no human being should be forced to go through this stuff. And just to have them feel safe enough to talk about these horrors, and whether they're crying or not, whether guys are passing the Kleenex or not, whether they're doing, mindfulness as they do it, It's just, one after the other. You see these just incredibly moving, powerful interactions, and it's about that healing energy. It's about that deeply, human, it when you feel it, energy of healing, processing rather than covering up.
The uncovering, the revealing.
Yeah, not running away from it, facing up. And as Bessel van der Kolk says, right? I mean, it's like you think it's going to kill you. You think it's safer to run away from it, but actually processing, feeling it is what's going to set you free. Seeing it clearly, being able to open the door and look at the demon right in the eyes and saying, yes, this happened to me. Yes, this happened to my mother. Yes, this happened to my sister, my daughter, my brother. Yes, this horrible stuff happened. And yes, this contributed to me going on a trajectory when I was not healing, that I did horrible things to people. And I am ashamed of it. And shame is, part of what I'm dealing with here. And, but I want to see it clearly. I want to understand it. And I want to become a peacemaker. I want to become someone who is going to contribute to not just nonviolence, but healing in my community, whether that be San Quentin or whether that be in Richmond or whether that be wherever the hell they go back to. And I want it to be durable because I want to do the work. And as difficult as it is, this is what, life is throwing at me, and I want to show up for the whole enchilada.
I really, it was such a subtle moment, but you could see what was happening when one of the men was sharing vulnerability around meeting their daughter. It showed the line of men, and they were all standing in their power. They did not turn their head from his suffering. They were all there in their own power, witnessing. And so that was such a profound moment that was caught on film, right? That like, we're here, we're witnessing. So what I really am seeing is that grip creates this container, and then there's a sangha and a community that really stabilizes the container.
Absolutely. And the body-based component is illustrated in, among other things, and if it gets to be too much, so that the speaker simply cannot speak, everybody will just say, okay, sit up straight, one hand on the heart, one hand on the stomach, and we're just going to breathe with you. We're going to carry this with you. You don't have to carry this all by yourself. Yeah, it's really powerful. Yeah, we are genuinely here with you, shoulder to shoulder. And we're processing this where it happens, in our lived bodies. It's not cognition. Cognition, 19 years, Thanksgiving, okay, you get it. It's about the emotion. And the theater of emotions is the body. And they're showing up for that. And sure, everything is racialized. Everything has to do with, are you from rural community? Are you from big city? And what's your age? And what was your gang affiliation 5 years ago? I'm not saying it all gets completely wiped away, but there's something deeply human going on when that happens, when these guys are breathing together. And every one of them was traumatized. Every single one of them. That's not to let them off the hook for killing their girlfriend 25 years later. I'm not saying it's okay. And they're not saying it's okay. But every single one of these guys went through just unspeakable horrors as a child. Very, very often domestic violence having to do with men beating up and other stuff, women and children. That is just, unfortunately, a common thread doesn't even begin to cover it.
I feel like I want to ask two more questions, and then I want to open it up to our audience. I really love how everyone's been engaged in the chat as well. And Shonda, so grateful that you're here and witnessing this conversation too. She shared that she had attended one of the marathon grip sessions and that it absolutely took her breath away, but was also so tremendously healing as well. My first of my last question is, with the title, we have guiding rage into power. Will you give us an example of an exercise or maybe a modality that really starts, or maybe is in the middle kind of this process of that transformation of rage into power?
Mm-hmm. I guess, and I don't think actually the name is that great, because it's not about rage. It's about any powerful emotion. It can be anything. And I mean, grip is catchy, right? You get a grip on your emotions and on your life and all this other stuff. But and certainly, I think when the name grip started, maybe there was more emphasis on rage. By the time I studied it, it wasn't really rage based. It wasn't anger management. But I guess the modality, the example, I guess, that I would go to is sitting in the fire, which they mention, and they do different things when they sit in the fire. It's a meditation practice. But one of them that is most striking is starting maybe a 10, 15, 20-minute meditation with just breathing, grounding yourself, and then imagine holding a baby in your arms, and then imagine you are the baby, and then imagine yourself as a child, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, when the horror came into your life. And if you have that clarity and balance of 10, 15, 20-minute meditation, and then you go there in a group with other people doing it, it can be extremely, extremely powerful. And they don't do this on the first week, believe me. They build up to this. When people are ready for this, they go this deep. And you get to a state, if it works well, that you can actually feel your palms sweating as a 6-year-old boy hiding under the bed. You can actually revisit this. You don't have to run from this. You can recover that which you have been cut off from, namely your lived body and your emotions. When you were 6 and this happened, there was nobody who could help you. There was no trauma treatment, et cetera, et cetera. So you were forcibly cut off from yourself. Maybe now you're 36 or 46, and you can actually get back in touch with aspects of yourself that you were forcefully severed from. And those tears, yes, it's tears because of the horror, but it's also tears of joy because you're whole again. After maybe 30 years of not being whole and acting out and getting high and lashing out and joining a gang and covering up and covering up and covering up, not being whole. Now you're whole again. And maybe there's nothing in the world as wonderful as being clear and whole, even if it requires going through this, unspeakable horror. So, yeah, I guess that would be the example.
Thank you. It's so radical and profound, inner child work, soul retrieval, visualization, and doing it in a group, right? So I think there's creating that safety of the group, then you're going through it. So this wasn't one of my last questions, but what does integration look like, right? Because you can't just, oh, hey, we're going to do this deep inner child work, and then we'll see you next week. What does it look like coming back into the room after the process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's the magic of the sort of the way the curriculum has been tweaked. And it was tweaked for 20 years before it went live in 2011, by the way. I mean, Jacques did not start this with grip. He started this with, let's bring Buddhism to San Quentin. And slowly but surely, stumbling onto what worked. Basically, every interaction was a focus group, right? Seeing, they need this, they don't need that. He put together this incredible sequence of ceremonies, rituals, exercises, unfinished business. You write a letter to your daughter that you haven't seen in 15 years. You maybe read the letter that your daughter writes back to you. The youngest daughter, Daddy, you keep saying, read this to me, but I can read now, all this kind of stuff. Everybody in the room is in tears. Everybody's in tears. You start talking about not saying the daughter and she knows how to read now, guys are losing it. Every one of them. So yeah, it starts to interlock because of these powerful experiences. And it's not just any old group of guys, right? You're talking about 30 guys, 25 of whom who have killed somebody and are doing 25 to life. So it's emotionally charged before there's anything going on that's emotionally charging.
Yeah.
And then when they actually start doing the work on top of that, it's like, wow, I mean, yeah, it's the most powerful thing I've ever stumbled upon.
And I always love when we get together and we can talk for a very long time, but I'll keep it to one more question and then we'll open it to our audience. You know, so you get to do quantitative or qualitative, you know, you're investigating and you're researching, like maybe paraphrasing or like whatever rises to the surface. Like, what is it that you want to share with our audience from your research and witnessing?
Well, I mean, the quant research is interesting. The guys filling in the surveys talking about how awesome they think this program is interesting. There's some indication of scientific indication of durable effects in terms of, you know, socio-emotional development. But I think the qualitative stuff that I've sort of been cueing you into with what I've been saying is more profound. There's so many different things that deserve to be researched. You know, like what makes a great facilitator? How do the facilitators cope once they are no longer incarcerated?
Oh no, hopefully Bo will come back.
Uh-oh, am I back?
Yeah. Okay. So the last thing we heard you say was what happens to the facilitator when they're no longer incarcerated?
Yeah. There's 100, you know, questions like that. Can GRIP be facilitated with high fidelity as it spreads out maybe to 5 or 10 or 15 prisons? There's a gazillion empirical questions. One of the prisons, and just, you know, that's an incredibly interesting piece. Do they feel threatened by this? Are they embracing it? How do the guys who are, you know, in a cell with another guy taking grip, how do they react to it? This is a big one actually, I think, can guys going through this when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even while they're still incarcerated, can they equip their loved ones, for example, their sons, who are at an enormous risk of being incarcerated themselves, just statistically speaking, can they equip them such that they won't be incarcerated? Questions. I think we froze again. Uh-oh.
It was freezing a little bit back and forth, but
Oh.
for that last round, we did hear, at least I heard what you were saying.
Good. Maybe we should open up the Q&A and I can turn off my video. Is that
Yeah.
a crazy idea? Then I'll be able to
No,
tune in.
I don't think that's crazy at all. And I really love, you know, the lineage then of GRIP, right? Like, how does this work? So I hear that they're showing up and they're healing intergenerational trauma, right? Like the lineage of abuse. And so really turning that around, and how do we transform what we are passing on?
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
And the way it can transform their relationships also with their abusers, their fathers, for example, or their mother's boyfriend. And it's profound to see these guys get to the state where they're like, I see it clearly. It happened to him as well. He didn't have grip. If I hadn't had grip or something else like it, I would probably be, you know, doing the same gangster stuff now. So they get to this state of, you know, really, really being concerned about their victims and even their victimizers, which is, you know, profound to see.
Amazing. I love GRIP. It's been so amazing having you on. So thank you. And I want to bring you back in 2022. Just have another conversation.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Good. So for our audience, maybe this is your 20th webinar of the year, maybe this is your first webinar of the year. Again, welcome. So to engage in the Q&A, we can, if you look at your Zoom screen at the bottom right, there's a Q&A box. So if you have a question for Bo, generally about him, about his work experience, about GRIP, you can drop your question into this Q&A box and we will respond to you. And let's actually do this. Shonda, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't know if you are in a place where you could turn on your video, if you want to hop in and say hi, maybe while people are cultivating their questions. Shonda, I would welcome you into the conversation. And if you can't, no problem. Shonda's here. Okay, so let's see. Can we invite you in? Maybe Bill can help me with this on the other end. It's just allowing me the option to chat. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you can invite Shonda to speak or to turn on her video, I appreciate that. Okay, great. Shonda says, thank you, Bo, for allowing yourself to be transformed through research. I want to be like you when I grew up. Your work in turn, that's awesome. Your work in turn will support others in understanding not only the importance of GRIP for incarcerated people, but perhaps how we all need a little GRIP or other embodied healing practices in our lives. Awesome. Thank you, Shonda.
Thank you.
And if you want to pop in and turn your video on, you're welcome.
And Blair, if you want me to turn off my video because I'm breaking up, just tell me. I'll leave it on. But if I get choppy, just let me know.
Okay, it's been okay for the last few minutes, but I will let you know.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, Shonda. Welcome.
Hi, Blair. Hi, Bo. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. This has been inspiring and very generative, very much like when we first spoke. So really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for setting this in motion.
And Shonda, I'll also invite you. I know that you had attended a GRIP session as well. And so maybe if there's a story that you want us to witness or anything that you want to share about that experience that would add to this conversation, we would love to hear that.
Yeah, you know, I was really touched by the film clip that was shared because so many of those men sitting in the circle I knew from like our yoga program or seeing them doing garden work as part of Insight Garden Project or part of the arts program and you know, it's just beautiful to see how engaged an individual can be in their own healing and so committed to the liberation of others, because many of those men are now outside, they're now free, and I'm Facebook friends with them. And I see the work that they're doing in their communities and how they're serving their communities. And so it just really warms my heart and really kind of amplifies the work, right? That this is so necessary. And this is prison reform, right? Like this is truly like reformation on like a whole another level.
Beautifully said. Yeah, no, this is prison reform at its best. And yeah, liberation practice. Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you, Shonda. Thank you for joining in. And we have a question that was dropped into the Q&A. So from Petri, can I ask how it is for the group to go back out into the wider prison community? What's the process for them to resurface from such a deep level of vulnerability and be protected back in the hard prison environment?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. They don't go out of prison as a group. Yeah. Do you mind me staying here for a couple minutes? I'm recording a webinar actually. I had better network connectivity here. I have a 16-year-old daughter and I'm invading her room, so we had to sort of navigate. They don't leave prison in a group. They leave prison with like $40 and some plain clothes, and here's the gate and there's the bus. And anything can happen. I mean, some of them have a wonderful support network. Some of them are just like, you know, halfway house and the worst neighborhoods you can imagine, and just extremely, extremely difficult. Some of them have been through the GRIP trainee facilitator program for years, and some of them can work for GRIP. Some of them find work, like the guy with the dreads in the video, and other programs. Some of them are either because they're less equipped, or just because there's no work out there for them. They don't find their way to giving back to the community. Some of the, despite the fact that I would argue many of them are equipped to be like super social workers, a lot of them are just like sweeping streets or doing something to get by in very, very harsh conditions. So yeah, there's no easy answer to that question. There's massive variation, and I am concerned about just plain old GRIP graduates or the facilitators, the guys who are facilitators on the inside. What happens when they go back to these universes where men don't cry, boys don't cry, you don't show vulnerability, they don't have the circle. And maybe you could say the work really starts once you get out, or once your time in GRIP ends and you're back out on the yard, maybe for another 20 years. And yeah, I would love to see the day when GRIP has enough resources and, let's say, symbolic capital that people say, we have to take very seriously the follow through, in prison or outside of prison. We can't let people who have done this kind of profound healing work just, out on their own in these cold universes and just like, hey, good luck, guys. But yeah, that would require funding. That would require organizational capacity, consciousness. And I don't want to get too negative, but right now I don't see a whole lot of indications that we're moving in that direction. There's wonderful work to be done on this front, helping guys who have been through something like this. It doesn't have to be GRIP and a year-long program. But yeah, I often hear people say, I had this wonderful, 8-week trauma treatment thing. And then it's like, okay, goodbye. And, what happens then? There's no more group, there's no more support. And yeah, it's another example of that. We need something more with more continuity and sort of like baked into the cake somehow, into our regular lives. And yeah, I mean, there's a reason, the Catholic Church has been around for so long, right? I'll see you next week. They institutionalized it. And, Buddhism, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying that it's religion. It's a secular program, but I would say, you start to think about some sort of continuity, some sort of how do you build on it and keep it going, as religions have done, obviously.
Yeah. And, I think finding Sangha after being incarcerated can be 10 times more difficult, especially if you're a person of color. You're like, oh, do I feel safe or comfortable, practicing with a bunch of white people? Maybe I'm speaking specifically of like a California kind of community or wherever it is that they're released. I feel like finding a Sangha that really is also in their own power, right? I feel like maybe many of us have been let down previously by a Sangha or a group of people that practice. You're like, I'm so excited to be here and sit, and you're like, oh my God, there's as much drama here as within my friend group, right? And you're kind of, you see once again, right? You're like, oh, we find this work, we find the inner development, or we find mindfulness and yoga because we are suffering, right? So like these Sanghas or these groups aren't removed from the abuse of power. We're not removed from our own suffering. So then to have a group or from being incarcerated to find a Sangha or a place of practice, I can imagine would be difficult.
Yeah, very difficult. And I mean, it can be because of race, it can be because of class, all these intellectual, whatever, upper middle class people. It can be, hey, I have to have 2 jobs to pay the rent. When the hell am I gonna fight traffic 4 hours to get to my wonderful community if I'm working 80 hours a week? It can be any number of things. And yeah, that's sort of the tragedy of seeing something so beautiful if you don't know a way to elongate it. Having said that, I've also spoken to just regular GRIP graduates, not employed by GRIP or anything like that, who say, yeah, I was able to turn the corner on this, and I have much more healthy relationships with people around me, and I understand my tendencies, and I'm a emotionally mature adult, not just because of GRIP, also because of age, and they don't express some need to have a sangha like institutionalized practice center thing going on in their life, but yeah, it is definitely a concern to going cold turkey, if you like.
Yeah. We have another question popped in. Can you speak about the role of movement or yoga in the GRIP program? So any embodiment practices that you offer?
Yeah, no, I have never been in a GRIP space when they, unrolled the yoga mats and got into anything like that. I know there is some of that goes on. Again, I haven't sat through a year-long program, but it's all about the body as the foundation. And like I said, the breathing exercises, the body-based meditation, body scans, it's very much in that that world of the body keeps the score, and this is where the action is. And if we can't process here, then it's meaningless to just talk the talk of the program. And yeah, just simple things like putting your hand on your heart and on your stomach when one of your brothers in your tribe can't deal. That's a bodily practice, sitting up straight and doing that in unison, 30 people. And also the bodily element of just sitting together in a circle, because all the eyes are at the same level, right? The height differences go away, and your bodies are arched in the same way. You're sitting on the same chairs. And also, by the way, wearing the same blues, right, from the prison garments. So it's sort of like always already either implicitly or explicitly embodied. The entire GRIP program is embodiment based. But no, I think they do some yoga, and I haven't even witnessed it.
I like hearing that the root or the foundation of it is from an embodied place.
Absolutely.
And I think, I don't want to speak for all views of Buddhism because I don't know, but within the root of Buddhism, it's the idea that the body is already enlightened and that everything else needs to catch up. So if that was the foundation for also building this program, right, or that wisdom. So it's, that the body is enlightened.
Yeah, apparently there's a story about the Buddha saying to the monks, if you remember one thing, mindfulness of the body. It's pretty fundamental to this Eastern philosophic tradition, and certainly your yoga practice and GRIP. That's maybe the common denominator in a culture where this sounds so freaky and hippie and exotic and weird, and here it's like taken for granted, of course.
And I think probably everyone in the room is in agreement or is also, either understanding or has a love of movement and this understanding of ourselves and the greater world around us. We have a question from Hannah. What is it like for them going from the group to the yard? Does it make it easier to associate having increased self-knowledge? Does it make it more difficult? So what's the transition look like?
That's great. It depends on the yard. If you're in the type of yard that's just, violence all over the place, it can be really difficult to, make the transition. If it's not that hideously violent, unpredictable, then when the trigger happens, the potentially escalating moment, and you're trained to, stop and just reflect and breathe and, not get into the escalation. People around you sometimes in certain yards can sort of resonate with that, recognize it. So it really depends on how out of control, violent, toxic the yard is. I had some great conversations with guys in a prison called Avenal, and they were on a certain yard that wasn't nearly as bad as some other ones, and they were like, yeah, when we're playing sports and we have all these, normally this would lead to a confrontation, and now because of this training, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to put myself outside of it. I'm not going to contribute to it. And like magically other people around are like, wow, that was really cool. You didn't just like mindlessly, heedlessly just go into the normal response pattern. They get like immediate like high fives. So, but yeah, no, if you're in the wrong place, it could actually, increase your chances of somebody messing with you. Like there is the horrors of prison. It can be logical to, perform, I'm crazy, don't mess with me. So it really depends on the setting. I think in terms of the broader setting, there's reason to be hopeful, as this prison warden I just interviewed said, if you have enough guys who have been through the program and or are open, curious about the program, you can to some degree flip the culture on the yard, which brings us back to the whole what is prison reform thing. But that, that's an empirical question, how bad was it, and how many guys are open to it that are not taking the class and all that stuff. But that's a really interesting prison reform qual and quant question, I think.
And I really do hope that, we're here for abolition, but maybe the future is we're cultivating a culture that's happening that actually is reform. We had a woman, Susie, on earlier in the year, and we had a warden on. So at this specific facility, it was a rural community, which also was interesting, right? People that were incarcerated grew up and were friends with the correctional officers. They know their aunt and uncle. And so it was really a community, but there is, an unequal power structure. So the warden started doing yoga for correctional officers, yoga for the men that were incarcerated. They would open up on Sundays and they would do family yoga, right? Wow. So really starting to shift the culture of the space. And so, I hope that is a little bit of the path that we're all starting to walk.
That'd be beautiful.
And then I think I would love for Shonda to ask any questions for Bo as well.
Yeah, Bo, you had mentioned that there's some quantitative aspects that are currently under study, and I'm just curious if you could discuss what instruments are being used and as well as measures.
Just pretty formal, validated psychosocial, scales on a scale of 1 to 5. How much has GRIP helped you with this? So it's self-reported, having to do with their perception of, let me say, how are you getting along with your cellmate, or does this help you? Does this program help you with getting insight into your own psychology? All this type of very traditional stuff that you see on countless surveys. What one ideally would want to do is have a randomized controlled trial, and in a place where it's oversubscribed, have the research team say, okay, we're going to get a list of 1,000 names, and 500 are going to be treatment and 500 are going to be control. And if the controls, the guys on the waiting list, do not come into GRIP for 3 years because there's it's so oversubscribed, there's only 30 guys, et cetera, eventually you will have quite a number of guys from the treatment and from the controlled population. And if you can get data on them, or for example, their kids, or any relevant data point, I would assume that you would be able to quantify the effects of the program in terms of whatever you're looking at. This would cost millions, and there's all kinds of ethical issues involved, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And in the absence of this, I'm not against these types of surveys, these validated scales, as they call them. But in the absence of this, I would say the more rich stuff is just, find a way to get a recording device in there. It's a big hassle. And sit with these guys and just say, tell me your story. And what does GRIP mean to you? And it's stunning. I was part of a research team, the interview team that conducted, I can't remember the number, 70 or something of these interviews in 2 different prisons. And we sent the audio recordings to a woman to transcribe. She had never heard of GRIP. And halfway through, I check in, hey, how are you doing? And your understanding thing, how's the audio quality, all that kind of stuff. And she's like, Bo, I need GRIP. I was like, it's called therapy, honey. You don't want to go to prison. But no, you just get the feeling of their perceptions about it, how compelling it is, how meaningful it is, and it's very different for different guys. They resonate with it, and they talk about it, and they talk about their own journeys in some way, on some levels very different, and on some levels it's very similar. But to my mind, that's where the action is. And well, you talked about your Facebook friends. And these guys doing this wonderful work in these various communities, equipped, as I would say, again, as like super social workers after going through this year-long program, and maybe also the facilitator training program. That's an incredible, research object right there, waiting to happen. Get 10 or 20 of these interviews, maybe once or twice, and just let the world know what they say. That seems to me more revealing in terms of at least depth and real insights than what these surveys are gonna generate. Having said that, it's great to have quantitative results, and we've seen, for example, if you ask them to say on a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think of this? Has it helped you with your relationships with the COs? Has it helped you with your relationship with your family? How would you rank this vis-a-vis other programs? And every single time they're like 4.5, 5, 4.5, 5. It's just like they love it. And it's great to have these numbers. And it can also help with acquisition for further research, to get money for research, but also hopefully to get some funding for GRIP. There's a lot of policymakers who are not going to read qualitative stuff. So, if you give them a report and you've got some numbers they can anchor their decisions on, that's terribly useful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shonda, for joining in and letting me put you on the spot. I really appreciate it. And also a thank you for introducing us to Bo. This has been amazing. Even hearing about GRIP has really inspired me. That what we all love here in the room and what we love to study can really be of benefit to all beings. So thankful to have you here. And if there's anything that you want to leave our audience with, anything that we didn't touch on today, anything that you are wanting to express about GRIP, about programming, about incarcerated populations, I would love to give you the floor now.
Oh, wow. I guess I would want to just come back again to the guy with the dreads in the video. And he said, for years, I thought I did what I did because of the code of the street. You heard him say it in the video. They do something on our side, we do something on their side, right? And he said, as I got further into this program, maybe other programming, he wasn't doing a commercial for GRIP, but he certainly is very positive about GRIP. He said, it slowly started to dawn on me. It wasn't about the code of the street. It was about me being capable of unspeakable violence. And gradually, I came to grips with that. What was that all about? Mm-hmm. And, you can think for 20, 30 years that you understand yourself, and you can get down to a deeper level and see what's really moving you around, what's making you, what's undergirding your response pattern. And I would say keep digging and stay curious. And whatever your practice may be, yoga, meditation, something else, there's jewels down there. And there's a lot to be said for just gaining clarity and being gentle with yourself on this lifelong process. And yeah, it's wonderful to see that you have your community set up to facilitate this. And thank you so much for the invitation. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really
you.
appreciate it, Bo. Thank you.